Welcome to Live with Greg, or Live with Greg, depending on semantics.
This is potentially sticking my foot way down into my throat, so I apologize up front. But you're very tall.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that your power seat and where you put your patients is you bring yourself below them.
Yeah. I like being on the ground. I'm a ground kind of girl, you know. It just feels good to be close to the earth for some reason. So I apparently like the low thing. Plus, it's different perspective because I am very tall, and I don't know. It's interesting that you point that out. I never considered that, but I think I feel safer, you know, close to the earth sometimes.
Well, I wonder too if you're in a place of serving, which is what healing is, right?
Yeah.
That then you want to
Ground my energy.
right on bring yourself, like, 'cause there is an element of power in height, whether.
Yeah, you're right. And I actually do a lot of speaking at events and things like that. And I love that platform because I feel really strong, you know. And I was a model for a little while. I did some runway, you know, work. So that was like empowering for me. So I lived in New York for a long time, and that really helped me with my confidence because there I could just be, you know, myself. And I love the anonymity of that, and, you know, it really helped me a lot. So, you know, I like tall ceilings, and I like the trees here make me happy because they're so big, you know, so that grounds me a lot. But it's interesting, you know, moving in, should we just start recording?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, I just think we should. I'd rather okay, you know.
Okay.
Can you?
We're recording.
Oh, we are?
Yeah.
I love that. I was like, that's the trick, is that you don't tell the person. Oh my God, that is so awesome. See, I knew. Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah, so we can start now.
We can start. Oh my God, that's brilliant. Thank you. You totally get me. You're very intuitive too.
Thank you.
Yeah, us birds of a feather, you know. I think I identify a lot with like the misfit culture and just people. You know, there's this great meme I saw once that was like, if you weren't born into the world you fit into, it's because you were meant to create a new one.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so beautiful, you know, because a lot of us were born into challenging environments and things were, you know, not quite, we didn't fit. You know, I grew up in Michigan, which is this, you know, beautiful place, and I had a beautiful family, but I just never fit, you know, and because I was so tall and just a little different than most people. It's like a flamingo. It's like the ugly duck syndrome. You know what I mean?
Right.
That story is like, that's it. He just kept going from home to home, trying to find where he fit, and he realized he was a swan.
Right.
That tale is just, that's such an archetypal tale. And I really love helping people who are challenged by being different. And I love, you know, one of the things I love about being here is this inclusivity is just built into the fabric of this community and this area. I just think it's really beautiful to see, because growing up in these smaller places, the open-mindedness is sometimes, you know,
Right.
lacking, for a better word.
Right. I'm involved with a anti-racial task force for the school district, and I'd say that the inclusivity needs work for people of color.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, there's so much of that's been coming out in the culture, you know? I mean, it's really, you know, and I have my own issues, you know what I mean? I think as loving as I am, I have prejudices that have been imprinted in me from fucking a long time. So we all struggle with that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do,
Your perception is programmed, and you know,
Right.
we're programmed.
That's
At a cellular level with ideologies and ways of seeing things that are just in our fucking DNA, and it's incumbent upon us to heal that.
yes.
And that's why some of us have a very, you know, their lifetime is very significant. I mean, all lifetimes are significant, but you learn the lessons, and we carry, you know, through epigenetic, all of these things. It's fascinating what we don't even know yet about who we really are. And I just love exploring that concept because it's fascinating, right?
It is. It's a great question to ask, who am I?
Yeah. And you often learn that by finding who you're not.
Right.
That's what the Earth School is about. What am I not? You know, that's why it's called resistance and contrast and fear. It's the ego. It's black and white. We live in the world of duality. You know what I mean? This is our cross to bear, is being here. And so now with all these ascensions going on and these spiritual awakenings, which I really would like to talk about, you know, because I really, my experiences have been significant, and I want people to understand that what they're going through is not necessarily a tragedy or the end of their life. It's a fucking spiritual awakening. And there's not enough education and knowledge around what that process is, what that looks like, what that experience is like, and we label it as depression or anxiety or, you know, all these horrible things. And we, you know, then they get on drugs and they get on pharmacy, you know, and then the culture just freaking eats these people up. This is a sensitivity. And a lot of this is going on with the teenagers right now and the younger kids. I mean, the sensitivity of these children is astronomical, and they're just being totally bombarded with the ego, you know, and it just scares me. It doesn't scare me. It just makes me feel like we got to have these conversations, because sensitivity needs to be understood and not seen as a weakness. You know, it's your superpower. And if I can help one kid, one child overcome their insecurity, like how I was, and I didn't, you know, was just so wounded, that would be a life well served, you know?
So you said you were a model in New York, and
I was a stylist in New York. I tried the modeling thing, and I really don't like having my picture taken. But I did a couple runway shows, and that was really fun. But I'm much more of a behind-the-scenes kind of gal. Like, okay. I don't like a lot of attention, you know? So, I mean, I'm learning to appreciate it now. But I never wanted to be seen for just my looks. I don't really think I'm that pretty. So, because of the ugly duckling thing, I was never told that, certainly. So my confidence was a lot, you know, had to do with the fact that I decided to go behind the camera, because I love the atmosphere. I love the creativity. And so I did fashion and wardrobe for 15 years, you know, starting in Detroit and Chicago and then New York. And I had my own thing, and I worked on photo shoots, you know, dressing models and actors and, you know, for a long time. And it was very successful, and I had a beautiful life, you know.
So how did your awakening happen?
Well, the first one was in my 20s. You know, a lot of times spiritual awakenings happen after an accident or something. Like for me, it was like I broke my foot, and I was working for the elderly at the time because I really loved the elderly. It was very idealistic in my young 20s and thinking I could like change the world. And so I was living back in Michigan, preparing to go to graduate school, and I fell down helping these elderly people, ironically, like onto a bus, and I broke my foot, and I was sitting there at my parents' house, I just moved back from San Francisco, because I came out here in the early 90s, like 4 days after graduating from college, and then I made it like a year and a half out here, and then it was just too much. It was like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, you know. It was like the mid-90s. I was living in Lower Haight, you know. It was just like, I mean, it was balls out fun, and I still actually am close with people that I met at that time, and it was changed my life. But it was not easy for a girl from Michigan to like the real world, you know. So I went running back home, and long story short, I started, you know, because I had broke my foot, I had to sit there, you know, on my parents' backyard in the middle of the spring, you know, with this cast on my foot, and I just started meditating. And I just started like feeling all these things and seeing all these things, and a lot of repressed memories came through about trauma in my childhood, and I processed that. And then there was one spiritual bookstore where I grew up. It's called Mayflower Books in Berkeley, Michigan. And I went there every day, and I poured through every book. I mean, I spent hours in that store. I was so grateful for that store because it was every book, all of the stuff. I mean, I have only a handful of books now because I've moved around so much, but Osho and, you know, Wayne Dyer and Louise Hay and Deepak Chopra, like all, like I just devoured, you know, spiritual knowledge and information. And that's how I got into fashion, because ironically, I was like, well, is this really the area of my life that I want to go down? And the universe was like, hell no, you've got other fish to fry. And it just so happened that a friend of mine had started a magazine in Detroit called Our Detroit, and they were looking for an intern. And so I just started interning with them and became like, one of their art directors. And I helped launch this lifestyle magazine that's still very successful to this day. And it was such a cool, I just came alive, it was like fashion, all these things. And then from there, I purchased a vintage clothing store. So there's this sort of iconic store where I grew up called Patti Smith, and she was selling her business. And I was like, I'm gonna buy it, 26-year-old, totally clueless, So my parents like co-signed a loan, and I bought this store, and it was awesome, but it was like, I did not know how to run a business. All I wanted to do was create like window displays and, have parties and buy tons of cool clothes. And it was cool. It was back when, Detroit back then was when the White Stripes were coming up, and they would come in, and all my artist friends, it was just a huge creative time boom for Detroit back then. And it was fabulous. And everybody came in, and I just gave clothes away because everyone's like starving artists. And so I ended up, the business,
Right.
kind of failed. But anyways, I'm getting off track. Second spiritual awakening was really in New York. I had, it was 2008 when the recession hit, right? And things were really falling apart. It was a difficult time to be there because it was just restaurants are closing and your neighbors and friends are losing jobs, and it was a little weird. So I rented a beach house in Malibu. I was living with someone at the time, and things were just I'd been doing the styling thing for a really long time. And I just rented this beach house in Malibu for a few weeks to like kind of, figure it out. And 2 days before I was set to go there, I broke my wrist in a taxi cab accident on my way to a job, to set. And so I'm lying there with a broken arm going, holy shit, like I'm supposed to go to Malibu and I've got a cast on my arm, and I almost didn't go, but my friends were like, what else are you going to do? Sit in your apartment in New York, And that really opened me up too, because I ended up moving out here, to California, and I changed my whole life because I sat on that beach in Malibu and I just healed, all of my stuff. It's a very healing place. And so I decided to move to California, and that's when I reconnected with Ever's now father, my son. And we got together and had a baby, and, our relationship didn't last much beyond that. But I certainly, my child was definitely divinely guided. I just didn't know that until it happened to me. So that was the second. And the third was the most significant, which is very personal. I don't know. Am I talking too much?
No, it's supposed to be.
Is this interesting to you? Because I get overconscious of me babbling too much. But the third really that's what brought me to where I am now, which happened in Los Angeles. It was, I was single. My son was like 4 years old. I was living in Santa Monica, working downtown at a branding agency. And my son that Christmas was with his father back in Michigan, visiting family. And, I was young. This is 8.5 years ago. So I was still kind of like out and about, on the town. My girlfriend was also on her own for Christmas that year. And my kid's away with his dad. I'm like, it's Christmas. We're in LA. What are we going to do? And she's like, let's go to the Chateau. I don't know if you're familiar with the Chateau Marmont. It's a hotel in LA.
Yeah.
It's like Jim Belushi died there. Like all these rock stars have stayed there. It's fabulous. It's just like at a really cool place. And she lives right down the street. So we're like, all right, we're going to book dinner, So we just kind of like went thinking like, all right, we'll just go have a nice steak dinner at this beautiful place and just, relax. Well, we get there, and it was like one of the best nights I've ever had at the Chateau. I was not thinking anything. Like, I thought it would just be like maybe some families. It was like a party. As soon as you walked in the door, it was like on. And we just proceeded to just drink and eat. And I mean, everyone was talking to us. We're running around. Like, it was just the most fun I've ever had. And I'm sitting there at the bar, the little sidebar there, and this guy was following us around. It was just really fun. I was like lit up like a fucking Christmas tree, imagine. And I'm wearing my high-heeled boots, and I am just like,
On fire.
on fucking fire, you know? And I'm sitting there at the bar. My friends go out to have a cigarette. And I turn around, there's this gentleman sitting at the table right there, and he's just looking at me. And he had this look on his face. He had one of those like half grins, you know, like Mowgli at the end of that animal Jungle Book, you know, and he's in the tree looking at the girl, and he like,
Yeah.
it was like a look to end all looks, you know, and it reminds me a lot of the story between Mike Nichols and Diane Sawyer, if you're familiar with that story. I won't go off on that tangent, but the way she describes meeting him was exactly, she's like, my life was about to change when this man came into my existence. And long story short, he saddles up to the bar and introduces himself, and it was just like, whatever, it was just on, you know, and my friends come back, and the night just got more fun. Just so many cool people out having such a great time. And, I mean, you can probably imagine where this leads, but, at one point in the night, I was like, do you want to like go have a cigarette with me? And he's like, okay. So he walks out to the lobby, and I was like, okay, like there's a little smoking porch back there. And he's like, this way. And he takes me upstairs in the elevator up to the penthouse. And I walk in, and I was like, holy shit. It was like the one with the balconies, and it was just like, oh my God. It was room 69. And I walk in, and I am, the bartender at this point is just handing me cocktails. He was handing me absinthe, and I mean, I just did not know, Greg. I was just drinking, and like, and so I go out on the balcony, and I'm smoking. He's pouring me wine, this and that. Next thing you know, he kisses me. And I was like, oh my God, here we go. And then he's like, I'm like just spinning. And he's like, all right, well, we have to go back down because your friend's there. Like, I can't just take you, So we go back down. And yeah.
Surprising. That's
yeah, and yeah, because, I guess he's a cool, anyways, the story, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I don't know, no Hollywood ending here, but at the same time, he brings me downstairs, and, we proceed to hang out, and the night continues, and then it was pretty clear at the end, when everyone's, like, wrapping up, like, we were clearly going to spend the night together, and my friend's like, she gets up, she's like, if you do anything to my friend, I am going to hunt you down and kill you, And he was just like, oh my God, he like whips out his business card and hands her his card. I won't tell you who he is or what his name is, because I just would, protect privacy. But, and she's just, so she leaves, and we go upstairs and proceed to just like, you can only imagine. I don't remember a whole lot, but it was fun. It was fun. And the next morning, I'm just like, oh my God, I'm like, what? I barely slept, and I'm like, okay, I gotta go, and, all this and that, and I was happy, I was supposed to be in New York a few weeks later, so we exchanged numbers, and it was just amazing. It was just a very powerful experience for me, and I think for him as well, and he had to catch a flight, so it was just kind of one of those awkward but not mornings, and I just said goodbye, and I left, and I went back to my friend's place, and recovered, and then I went back a couple days later to Santa Monica where I live. My son's still away with his dad, and about 2-3 days later, I started to just get what I now know are downloads, but I didn't know what it was. I'd be in my room, I'd wake up in the morning, and I might get emotional because it was really powerful, and it just started happening, these visions, I would start to see things. I would start to see mostly past lives, with this person, and everything his soul had been through, and it was really heavy, and past lives that we had had together, and I just didn't know. I couldn't control the visions that were coming to me, and it just evolved from there. I would get into the shower, and I would just start crying and crying and crying uncontrollably. I would see like stillborn babies and tragic accidents and war, like just so much war, and I didn't know what was going on, and it just, from there, it just kind of, I just tried to kind of manage it, and I would be driving in my car in LA, these, you gotta be, and I would just, my body would start shaking, and I just would have to like pull over on the side of the road, and I just felt all of these things. And so I just started to kind of research, like, what is going on? Like, what is this? And that's what led me to studying the tarot, and I went on YouTube, and I learned about what I now believe is the closest thing I could find to describe what happened to me was a kundalini awakening, because it makes sense. The sexual, it's often through a sexual encounter, some kind of an impact, which it was, wakens that energy in that part of your energy system. And now that's why this content is so important for people to talk about this, because you feel like you're going crazy. Your body starts shaking. You don't know what's going on. You're seeing downloads, visions. You're having an awakening, meaning your gifts are opening up. It's a beautiful thing, but there's not enough, at least at the time for me, I had very little to go on. And you can't go to a doctor. Right. They're going to think you're crazy and shoot you up with some kind of medicine and put you in the loony bin, and I know myself to be a sane person, and I was perfectly capable of managing my life. I just was experiencing something very intense. And so I taught myself how the tarot became very interesting to me. I just started studying it, and I started learning it, and I just started to understand that it was the way that my guides were showing it to me was like, it was like a water stream, like a faucet, and I had to learn how to turn it off because it was just coming. And so over the course of the last 8 years, I've learned how to manage the downloads and to manage the visions and to manage the information so that I can turn it on and I can turn it off. And that was sort of what I had to learn over the course of 8 years. And in the process of doing that, it was a very painful experience because I thought this man was like my soulmate, I thought, and the whole twin flame thing, which is another important key point here, understanding the twin flame journey and how that's a very dangerous territory, because a lot of times there's information out there like encouraging people to be in really toxic situations, calling it a twin flame. So, I mean, that's a whole separate conversation, but I got really into that because that is the only thing that made sense to me. And I never saw this man again. We kept in touch for a very long time, texting and things like that. And I thought that was like this magical thing, but he never showed up. It was very painful for me as a woman to feel that way and to have this connection to this person and just never have them come be with me. You know what I mean? Like, I just was really confused by that and very hurt, and so I've had to heal that a lot with myself. And so that's why I started, what happened really was I was just starting to play with the cards and starting to channel. I would do automatic writing for people. Friends that were knowing about my gifts would just ask me, and I would just do things like write out things and give them to people, and they were like, holy shit, this is crazy. And at the time I lived in LA, my door was open a lot. I lived in Brentwood. It was just kind of like people would walk, neighbors would walk by. What are you doing? Oh, you do readings? Like, can I get a reading? And then people just started coming to me for readings, and I just started to learn and channel. And then when I came up here, during COVID, I spent so much time in nature that it really opened me up even more. And at that time, people were really struggling, so I was just trying to help as many people as I could by offering, the information that was coming through for me. And I was learning how to use it to help people. And so I started my business, Frontier Tarot, based on the idea of just taking all of that knowledge that I have now blessed to feel I have access to, and use it for the greater good, to turn all the pain that I had to go through, to understand that and to experience that and to go through that and turn it into something good. It was really important that I take all of that and transmute it into something that was a good, beautiful thing for people, and just to raise awareness around, spiritual awakenings in general and what that is like, and it's different for everybody, and just encourage people to open up to their own gifts, and it's I don't know if I think everybody has the ability, but it's definitely something that I cultivate, because now that I do this for people, it activates it more, and I love it, and I'm grateful for whoever I can inspire and help gain clarity. I think that's a big thing. But it's something that I just came to me. It's not like I tried. I had to learn how to manage it as opposed to just being at the whim of something that I didn't understand. So it took a minute, but yeah. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense.
Yeah, okay.
Did you communicate with the guy that your feelings for him and what you were expecting?
Yes and no. I had an experience. I was actually up here working. One of my clients was a wine client at the time, and we went to Outside Lands, which is the music festival, because you know how wine brands set up at the music festivals, and it's kind of a funny story, but we had to go because our client, we did the branding and marketing, these kinds of things for them. So we obviously got tickets to the show, which was awesome, and so it was Golden Gate Park. Imagine this is probably 4 years ago, and we go there super early, and we're helping get the booth set up and looking good, and just working with the client and whatnot. And I'm a cannabis consumer, and she had this edible in her kitchen. Holy shit, I took that edible. I took half of it. All the THC must have been on that half of the chocolate, because I show up and I am like paralyzed. Like I was like, I have to go sit. I sat on this picnic bench. I'll never forget this. This is like 7:30 in the morning. And it was beautiful though, because the bands were starting to do like sound checky kind of things. And you could hear just the simple guitar. It was incredible morning. I mean, it was literally like out of a movie. And I'm sitting there stuck to this picnic table. Like I can't move. I'm literally paralyzed. And thank God my friend is doing the business, and like I didn't really have much to do, so I could kind of relax. But I literally thought if I got up, I'd have a heart attack. And all of a sudden, this guy walks in with this dog, this big, beautiful dog. And I'm typically afraid of dogs. Like I have a little bit of a slight fear of them. And so I'm sitting there on this picnic table, and this guy, this young guy, with this dog starts walking over to me, and this big gray dog. And I'm like, holy shit, this is the last thing I need is like a freaking dog now. It was like a nightmare in my head. I was having like borderline panic attack. And this guy walks up to me, and this dog just starts walking up to me. And it's this beautiful gray, like I think it was like a Weimaraner, like breed, I don't know, something. It was just a stunning animal. And it just walked up to me, Greg, and just started like kind of nuzzling my legs and just kind of cozied up to me. And this young guy, super cute, he's like, sorry, my dog just wanted to sit with you. I almost cried. It was so beautiful. And I was like, oh my God, and he just sat down next to me, this guy, and we just started talking, and my whole body just started to relax. And because I had seen all of these visions were coming through about asking about the guy, did I ever share any of that with him? Just to end the story about the dog. So the dog was an emotional healing dog for this guy. And we just started talking. And the dog's name was Jules, which my name's Julie. And my friends call me Jules. And this dog healed me. She fucking healed me. And it was just incredible. And, it was just a beautiful, beautiful experience. And so I told him that over a text, like how do you explain like kind of a spiritual experience over, a text message. So I did my best, but I think on the phone once I did kind of tell him like the story, because I was saying I was having these downloads about you, and it was really starting to panic, I was getting really anxious, and then this dog, and so that's the extent of it. We didn't have long conversations, although I think we had a telepathic communication for sure. But I don't know, he's still out there in the world, and, I wish him nothing but the best. I was deeply hurt by the empty promises, and I still, don't quite understand all of that, but I trust that life is meant to, kind of take you in the right direction, and people are here to teach us and heal us, and I'm super grateful. It just took me a really long time to understand that maybe this person wasn't meant to be my partner or my person, but he clearly opened me up. And I'm learning how to manage that in new ways. And I'm grateful for it because, it changed my life,
So on your website, I think you say that you help people to know their purpose. Is that correct?
That's my favorite thing, because once you know why you're here, it's like that Mark Twain quote, like the two best days of your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why, you know, you figure out, like, I love that concept because I think so many of us are lost in the sea, you know, and when you're on purpose, your mission is fulfilled here, and then you can evolve and you don't have to come back around, you know, you can go higher and higher and higher. And so I think it's really important to, but, you know, it's often misunderstood. And like, you know, since like the 90s and Oprah, you know, you're finding your purpose and it's become really watered down, you know, life's purpose. Like, what's your purpose? Oh, find your mission. You know, I get a little bit cringy around some of these things sometimes, but the purpose really is to heal, you know, and to love. And so I think though we come in with like a soul mission, you know, we have all kinds of things going on. And I think helping people understand who they are in their essence is really important. You know, I'm a big fan of helping people find their uniqueness. And I think the culture really tries to get us to conform. And I think it's really sad to try to fit people into boxes. And I think I try to unravel some of that programming to help them reveal who they are within themselves. It's not like you pointed out on a map, but you don't, you know, most of the people that come to me at least are very open, you know, and, you know, I just try to kind of help guide them to what their highest potential is. Because I also think that's something that we all want. We all want to reach our potential, right? We don't want to be 80 years old looking back at our life thinking you missed out. You want to reach it, you know, don't you?
Absolutely.
Like,
absolutely.
And I think we get really confused by that and pressured by that. And I just think it's kind of fun to figure that out for people, you know? So opens them up, you know?
Yeah, you mentioned the duality of this planet.
Yeah.
So as you're talking about love and light, the duality of that, the opposite of that. Do you have
fear and ego, darkness, yeah.
Darkness. Like, have you had an experience with evil?
No, I don't. I mean, evil to me is our own internalized pain. It's the shadow, you know? It's the trauma we carry that has yet been processed, you know? It's just the fear within. So I think I choose not to talk about those subjects, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all.
I giving it any weight, any conversational time feels like it's feeding it, and I just choose to stay in the light. And you know, I darkness is very real, and I've been through it, and I go through it all the time. But it becomes, the shadow becomes less scary when you heal it. You know, when you work through that. You know.
Yeah, it seems like you experienced in Los Angeles, your third awakening.
Yeah.
Could be labeled as darkness.
Well, it is a dark person. The person I had met, and the hotel itself is dark. Yeah, I mean, there's an energy there. You're right. And I think people who are, you know, light workers, whatever you want to call the light, you know, they're often drawn to that, you know, to the dark. And I love it. Like, I just think that it's not something to be feared. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I think it's something to be embraced. And, you know, I love Carl Jung, and that, you know, his teachings, I think, are really, really profound, because it is about bringing light to the darkness. And I think that's part of my soul's mission, too. And a lot of people who are of the light attract people who are challenged and you know, not that they're inherently dark, but maybe they're just in a dark period. Right. And you're at a point in their life, and you heal that. You know, it's this healing.
Yeah.
It's healing. So it's difficult for people who are light, because often the darkness is, you're just kind of drawn to it, you know, but that's where you learn boundaries, and that's where you learn how to protect your energy. And this is the sensitivity part, right? That we all have to sort of be taught. You know, they don't teach you that stuff in college, and in college they do, you know, like they are. Like, I had my high school, a college professor, psych professor, who totally turned me on to all this stuff. It was like the thing and the no thing, you know, and I was like, wow, there's space in between things. And Dr. Andrew Barclay, he was amazing, you know, and I think those pivotal teachers at the right times are so instrumental to our lives. And I think it's really important. Teachers are so powerful. I mean, healers are one thing. Teachers, man, those are special people. So I just really, they're all there along the way. It's just what you choose to focus on,
So did you was your third awakening before or after you became a mom?
It was after.
It was after.
Yeah.
So you were a mother already.
I was a mother, yeah.
And was your son living with you at the time?
Yeah. He was living half the time with me and half the time with his father, who lived 15 minutes away, 20 minutes away.
So how did you balance?
It was hard. Oh,
Yeah.
God. Great question, because this is another thing for the moms out there. Especially when you're a single mom, there is really, really hard, to do that. And my son was really young when we split, and it was difficult. I was raising him in Santa Monica, and, the whole dream was gone, like raising your child with someone. It just, you were the mom on the playground with and all the moms with their diamond rings and all the stuff and the happy families and the husbands and the perfect things. And it was just me. It was very, very difficult. And my son, thankfully is a very, very beautiful soul and very healing and very easy, in terms of children. He was very, very, very sweet and patient and kind. And he healed so much of me, but it was really hard to find the balance between processing what I was going through and then having to
Be a mom.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's part of why it took so long for me to heal and process so much of it, was because I had to compartmentalize it in order to be strong. And it was a big sacrifice for me, but I did it, and he saw me in moments, and definitely there were moments I was scared shitless. I had no money. I had, I really was not doing so great, but I did it.
Yeah.
I did it, and I have an amazing son, and he loves me, and I love him, and it was a really hard time in my life, but I did it,
So is he open to conversations of tarot and spirituality?
Yeah, he loves it. He always counts my tarot decks. He's like, Mom, you got a new deck, and he thinks it's cool, and yeah, he's totally, these kids are really open, now. I think and I love that. There's the stigma around these kinds of things is hopefully evaporating a bit, because I just think that it's just going to be more normal for people to have these kinds of conversations, whether you choose tarot, whether you choose other divination tools, or you just, we're in the 5D consciousness now. You know what I mean? The 3D, we're ascending collectively. This is the ascension, right? That's so exciting, is that the conversations like this are just, how you doing? Great. It's changing. We're evolving, we're ascending, and it's beautiful. So it's just kind of connecting with that energy. That's why I also, do the readings and do this kind of work, because it keeps me elevated, keeps your vibration high, because that's the other thing. Once you find your gifts, which is back to your purpose, it's really your gifts. That's what I'd like to help unlock people, because we all are given gifts. And 9 times out of 10, actually 10 times out of 10, your gift is attached to your wounds. That there's a wound, and then if we can get to the wound and we can kind of massage that a little bit, the gift opens up. It just goes like that. So
why do you think that's the nature of it?
because God buries that in your healing process. There's actually a really, really beautiful. Go ahead.
So are you saying the wound happens and then God gives it a gift so that it's not an eternal wound?
I think my feeling is that part of being on earth is we're here to heal. And so for those who are on the healing journey and who embark on that journey, whether you call it the spiritual path or the healing journey or path of forgiveness, whatever it is, but doing so, the reward of being brave enough to look within, to look at those things that scare you, to understand those things, to heal your heart, to look at that. The gift is given to you as a reward for having been so brave to do that and to do the work of healing your heart and forgiving those that, have
Felt wounded by.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Felt wounded by. That's a great way to put it. Because it's not their fault,
Right. Exactly.
And I think we're in a blaming culture, and victim mentality, and I blamed a lot, I still do, believe me, it's a road, it's a journey. It's not like you're enlightened and, it just keeps going, So, but I think you find this sort of core part of yourself, and that's that wholeness that I think people are looking for, you know, that sense of completion and wholeness. And it's a process, but if you work with life heals you, and you heal itself, you know, and it just grows. It's often like a tree, you know, like the growth rings on a tree, you know, and
Right.
growth is painful, change is scary, but we have to be brave. And that's why I like to help people be brave, you know what I mean? To hold their hand, because it's so scary to face your fears. And people have a lot of trauma, collective trauma, you know, too. And, you know, I don't do deep healing. I mean, I think I do to some degree, but I don't consider myself that. I think there's people who can go really deep, and I respect their craft so much. I try to keep it a little lighter, although sometimes it just comes through. But it's a beautiful thing. On the other side of healing, on the other side of fear, is everything you want.
Right.
It's love, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, now I have nothing.
See? You've arrived.
Are your parents still alive?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how you've obviously transformed quite a bit from the young girl that grew up in their house to who you are now.
Mm-hmm.
How has your relationship with each other transformed with that?
Jeez, man, you're like Barbara Walters. It's been a journey. I have a lot of pain from my mother. My father's wonderful. He's an artist. And you know, my mother's wonderful in her own way, but it was a difficult, you know, because I didn't get I'm very sensitive, and so I had a critical mother. Let's just say that, you know, and you know, I know she did the best she could, and I'm working on forgiving a lot of that. But I haven't had much of a relationship with her in quite a while. So you know, she's alive and well, and in her world doing her thing, and you know, my dad is wonderful, but I am challenged that he didn't stand up for us. You know, even though he did, it wasn't quite strong enough for me to feel safe, you know. So you know, I wish them all the best. I'm so grateful, you know. As I heal myself, I realized that like I was meant to be here, and I'm, you know, for some reason to do what I do, and just to be who I am, and to accept all of it, and learning to be more grateful for the fact that they got me here, and all the good things that they did for me, which were incredible. And I don't know all of the story, and you know, it pains me a little bit, because I want to forgive and let all that go, and I'm working on it, you know. And I've come a long way, but we currently don't have a connection that's, you know, very physical. Let's just say that, yeah.
Okay, so you never shared your experience in Los Angeles with either of them?
No, oh God, no.
Would you be comfortable sharing this episode with them, you think?
Well, if they stumble upon it, I mean, at this point, I you know, I am who I am, and I've, you know, I feel like, you know, they've all really supported me in so many ways, and I have no problems with them knowing who I am. I do get a little scared, because I feel I don't want to be sabotaged, because I have been, and but I feel protected enough to know that I'll be okay, and I don't want anyone to like email that to them, and I doubt they're gonna find it. I mean, you know,
Right.
but whatever, you know. So what? I mean, what will be, but
Yeah.
you know, it's yeah.
It feels like a potential opportunity where you could present it to them, and they'd have their choice of whether they really listen
I
to
do,
it.
you know, hope to have a sense of completion around that. I'm just scared. I'm
Yeah.
really scared to talk to them. I'm terrified, actually. So, you know,
Yeah.
I can't do it by myself. I've tried. So, anyway, sorry.
That's okay. Do you have siblings?
Yes, wonderful, wonderful, beautiful sister, brother, beautiful family. I am so lucky. But sometimes there's that one poisonous drop, and it spoils the bunch, and I can't do that to myself anymore. I will not put myself in situations where I'm made to feel anything less than, appreciated. So it's a healing process. No, it's good. Thank you. I cry. I love cry. I mean, crying is very, it's hard, but I encourage it a lot, and I cry a lot. So I do feel like I'm not gonna, the garbage, right? They're taking the garbage out. We're taking the emotional baggage. I just released my emotional baggage. Thank you. Dang, I'm supposed to be healing you. You're healing me. Oh my God, that's so funny.
It's a mutual
That
process.
is hilarious. Literally, take that garbage out, Julie. Oh my God, thank you. Thank you, Spirit. Oh, I love it. Laughter is so healing too.
Yeah. Oh, I know what I was going to ask
God.
you. Did you grow up with Marlo Thomas's "Free to Be You"?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And Arlo Guthrie, and music is a huge passion of mine. And that's why I love it so much, is because it was an escape for me. Being in the back of, your mom's station wagon in the 70s when, like Jefferson Starship's coming on and like all this amazing music, and it just was my escape, and disco and all. I was like, the happiest times in my life as a child were dancing, to the music, because it was just so incredible. So music is so healing for me, and I think universally is. And it was because it pulled me out of, the pain that I was in for just 2 minutes and 36 seconds. A song is so just transformative and beautiful, and I just believe in the power of that so much.
It's interesting. You mentioned earlier how you don't know your parents' full story, like what their story is. And it reminds me, my father shared with me that his grandmother, he was a bitch in his words. But then he also shared that she came to this country with like 8 kids or something, and the husband passed away right when they got here.
Oh my God.
She didn't speak the language, raising 8 children on her own.
Yeah.
Right. Like you kind of, I think people's stories, you get insights into why their actions are as they are.
Yeah, and it builds compassion, doesn't it? It really does. And as challenging as it is, like I had love there. I had a grandmother who, I didn't see her all that often, but when I did, man, the love. She would just hug me and see me and talk to me about, she was just so loving. And both of my grandparents were, my grandmothers, and that healed me a lot, and I think their presence is, they obviously passed, but are very powerful in my life. My one grandmother in particular, because she just saw me, and teachers too. My 3rd grade teacher, there's these angels, in our lives, children who are, have difficult situations like that. Like they're angels around you, and that's why I believe in angels and spirits and guides, and they all helped me, and they were always there, and you just so grateful for that,
Have you delved much into the ancestral realms of spirituality, like where your genealogy is?
It's so interesting because I never valued myself enough to want to know where I came from in terms of like my, ethnicity and things. I'm really fascinated by it, but when you're raised with like such a low self-esteem, you don't think that you're worth anything. You don't think that there's any why would I go look at where I came from? I mean nothing, So I'm very curious about it, but again, it's one of those things where it's like you need someone to be like, let's figure out where you're from, and like someone to hold your hand through that process a little bit. It's sort of odd. I feel a little like I'm really curious, but I want someone to like do that for me or something. I don't know. It's weird.
All right, so you're holding a lot of people's hands on this life journey.
Yeah.
Is anyone holding your hand right now?
I hold my own, but working on that.
Okay.
Working on that, yeah. It's opening up is, I shut down quite a bit after my son's father, and I split up. There was a lot of betrayal there that was very wounding. And So I got into survival mode, where I just didn't open my heart really to anyone. I mean, this man that I met at the hotel I was telling you about, kind of, it just kind of threw salt on the wounds too, So I've been single for a very long time, and I've been mostly celibate, and I'm starting very slowly now, like literally as we speak, feeling like I'm opening back up again, and it's baby steps for me, but I definitely think that that's changing for me, and I'm excited to allow myself to feel that way again, because it's time. They keep saying this to me, Greg. They're like, it's time. Julie's gonna have to start to, and I'm like, oh my God, what's gonna happen now? But I feel like I'm at a really, really like interesting point in my life, and I'm very excited to see, how this all plays out, because so far it's really freaking awesome. So yeah, stay tuned.
All right, then we'll have a second episode.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. Now this is a very personal question, and so it may not be appropriate, but you've been very open with your experience at the hotel, at the chateau,
Yeah.
right? And that it was a very fun sexual experience.
Yeah.
Very hot. You have the sun in the world, and in our current culture, the Western culture, toxic male is one of the memes. So, how are you sharing the joy and love of sensuality in that realm of partnership with your son?
With my son?
And what I mean by that is you're one of his teachers.
Yeah, well, luckily he's just hitting puberty now, and he hasn't had a sexual awakening yet, but we're getting close. It's a very interesting question, because I've been on my own, and literally I can count on one hand the number of times I've been with someone in the last 10 years. So I don't know. I wonder if my own repression has... I don't know. I know I was very conscious of the fact that when I had Ever, I wanted to give him all of me. It was really important as a mother, and I did a really good job of that, because I was the single mom that took care of my kid, and I'm very hands-on. Same with his father. I give his dad a lot of credit. We did a really, really, really good job of raising our child, with, no nannies, no anything, shuffling him back and forth, the best schools, the best everything. We gave our whole hearts to this child, and it's very obvious that we did, because he knows he's loved, which is what one of his teachers said, and that was like the biggest compliment anyone could give me, was that he knows he is loved. I broke down in tears. I was like, oh my God, that's the nicest thing you could tell me. So I really devoted myself to him, in a very, loving way, and also in my own protective way. I think it was sort of an excuse for me, because I was a single mom, and I just gave him my heart, and I was never the mom that had a rotating, revolving door of men. I never felt like I needed a man to take care of me. I'm very independent, and although I always wanted it, I just didn't have it. So I learned to just, do the best. But now as he's getting older, I think that's what's also helping me open up again, is because, he's 12 and he's about to, and mom needs to be happy, and fulfilled and taken, care of in that way too. So I'm trusting the universe with that, and I'm really proud of how the choices I've made with him, and I invested a lot in him, and he's wonderful. But I am starting to feel like it's not doing either of us any good for me to stay so withdrawn into myself. I'm a very sexual person, and I'm very, I have some healing work to do around that, for sure. But I look forward to having a partner who's generous and patient with me, and I totally believe that that's possible. And it's happening, so it's just, for me, it's got to work on all levels, I've tried just to do like the, the sex thing. I'm just not built like that, It's just, I know a lot of women are like, oh, just go sleep around and do, I'm not, it's not in my DNA to do that. So, I just focus on myself and take care, part of what is really important to me is to learn how to take care of myself really well. And to value myself. And so I've had to learn those things, and that's taken some time, but I feel like I'm pretty close. Recently, I just, went through a big purification process and cleaned up my diet and lost some weight, and I'm exercising a lot more now, and it feels really good. So I'm just taking excellent care of myself, and I think that's what's shifting my external reality in that way,
That's interesting.
Yeah, as within, so without.
Yeah.
So as I learn to love myself more, I see it showing up in my life, and it's amazing. It's absolutely stunning, and I know it's worth the wait, because it's that good, and I can feel it, and it's just something that, like, it's like a fine wine. You just kind of want to sip it gently,
Right.
and I've learned to, I'm a double fire sign, and I like to move fast. I am like Mach 10 with my hair on fire. That's my speed. I love going fast, but in these situations, it's like I have to slow down, and I'm like, it's not my strong suit, but it's like, okay, be patient, and it's not always easy, but I'm learning how to just take it one step at a time.
Have you done any outdoor adventure stuff that supports that go fast, like whitewater rafting?
Yeah, I've whitewater rafted. That's super fun. I'm kind of a scaredy cat, so I'm not really big into, like anything.
Risk.
I hurt myself easily. I'm tall. If I fall, I break bones because I have really small bones for being as tall as I am. So my body can get injured really easily. So as much as I would love to surf, like, I just don't know if I do yoga. That's great. But moving fast is like New York, like that's why I really enjoy like being in New York.
Oh, okay.
Like that's why I like
Fast
being
energy.
there so much. It really suits my energy. So that's really a place where I feel most like excited. I'm always happy when I'm on a flight to New York, because I just tap into it, and travel too is really a fun place for me to experience that. And just business. I love business and creativity and making things happen, and so that really energizes me as well, is really the creative. So
do you have other businesses happening besides
Yeah,
spiritual work?
yeah. I have a gallery. I run a gallery down the street from me, and
Wait, is it the
Solstice Gallery?
Really?
Yeah.
That's so funny, because the photographer gentleman,
Yeah.
there's a woman I know in Sausalito who had a dog that he and his wife and family adopted the dog because it was so crazy.
Oh, really? The photographer? The owner, or?
No, I think he's at that gallery, and he's a photographer. He lives up...
Jimmy Crowley? Is it Jimmy Crowley? Or Bruce Steinberg?
Bruce. Does he have a wife?
I don't know.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay.
And I think I've seen you sitting in there before.
Yeah, I sit in the window.
Yeah.
For now, we're changing all that, but it's absolutely another divinely guided thing that came into my life. I mean, I could not. It's so important and special to me, and there's some really exciting things that I'm doing with that, because I love business, and I do my readings and the healing work, of course, because that's more for me of, I don't know, it's like being of service somehow. It sort of satisfies this need for me to help people and contribute. Obviously I, charge money and people pay me. So it's technically a business, but it's more just something organically that I do, because just people come to me, That's just, it wasn't like I set out to do that, you know what I mean? People started showing up and paying me to read for them. So that's why I do it. I really don't promote. I go on Instagram, and that's kind of it, So that just sort of runs its own little thing. And then in the meantime, I love art, I really, art is always, I remember being in 5th grade, and the picture lady would come. We called her the picture lady, like every one Friday a month. She'd show up with these paintings, of like class, like Van Gogh's Starry Night and The Scream and Monet, and she would stand up in front of the class, and I was just like, oh my God, I would see these works of art and I was just lit up, you know. And we had the DIA in Detroit, where I'm from, which is a beautiful museum. Diego Rivera mural, and I've just always friends with art. All my friends have been artists, and just I've been in the creative industry for a long time. But so I did this talk. This is what happened. I was guided to do a talk, because I do these talks sometimes, right? At a gallery that had just opened in town called Arena Galleries. I don't know if you're familiar with Arena Galleries. Turns out they were a client of mine. They were the client that I did the project for in Golden Gate Park when I had that spiritual awakening.
Yeah,
Right, and I'm walking. So this is the crazy thing. I was giving a psychic talk up the road in San Rafael at a psychic fair. I was giving a lecture, not a lecture, but whatever, intuitive talk.
Yeah.
That day, and I came home from giving this talk, and I was all like buzzing because I was just like at this psychic fair. I was like, I need to go for a walk and like clear ground my energy. So I go for my walk in town, and I look over. I'm like, Arena Galleries. I was like, that is so crazy, because I used to write for them. You know, they were my client. So I walk in there, and I just like, I'm like, oh my God, because I knew they had galleries up in Napa and whatnot. And I just start chatting with the girl, and it was just like, I was like, oh, I used to work for you guys, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, no way, this, that. We just started getting to know each other. It was a lovely conversation, and we ended up chatting about like what I do now, which is like this intuitive thing, and I'm like, oh, I give talks and stuff. We just started chatting about the possibility of me doing a talk there, using art as sort of this sort of like talk, I don't know. It just, the conversation started. We met for coffee. And so we decided I would do a talk there called The Art of Introspection, and use art as a tool for learning more about who you are, because the way you perceive art, the things you pick up on, the emotional reactions you have are all in, ways for you to understand yourself and bring out, a little bit more self-awareness, right? So long story short, I give this talk. It was last November, and it was great. We had great turnout. It was so much fun, and they loved it. And I was just kind of got the art bug. I was like, I just need to be around art, because after being in COVID and being in lockdown for so long, I just needed to get out into the world. And my readings I do from home, and I was like, I just need to not be home all day. And so I was like, I'm going to maybe just find a side gig working at an art gallery, that way I can be around art that I love. And sure enough, I go on Craigslist, and it's like this ad for Solstice Gallery. And I was like, that's this little spot right down the street from me, and I'm fairly new to the area. So I'm just like, I walk by there all the time, going to Whole Foods and this. And I always was like interested in that space. I'd go by, look in the window, like, what's going on in here? It's like, it's not open. What is happening? Like, one day I walked by and there's people hanging out, but I was just like, what is going on? And it looks so interesting and cool.
Isn't the picture of Keith Richards, isn't it?
Yeah, there's an image of Keith Richards. And,
so you're like, well, somehow there's stuff going on.
Yes, very interesting place, right? And so I was like, oh, I'll put my resume, like, drop it in the mailbox. Just like creepy old mailbox he has outside. And like 2 weeks later, I get a call, like, oh, hey, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, hey, and so we start chatting, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just looking for something part-time, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, this sounds great, we just had a phone conversation, and then I don't hear from him, and I go to Sedona for my birthday, because I just turned 50 this past year. So thank you. So I was there with my sister, and it was amazing. I'd never been to Sedona. It was fantastic place. And I get a call from him, like, hey, can you meet, or text or something. I'm like, well, I'm in Sedona, but when I get back. And so, yeah, long story short, I got back, and we met, and it was just like boom, 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 boom. And he's like, here's the key, do your thing. And so now I'm there 3 days a week, and we're lining up some really incredible shows, and it's really going to be exciting. And there's people who are in the music business are going to really be floored by who's coming up here to show for us in the visual capacity. So I've friends from my LA, New York days that I've, who are artists who are, I'm going to be representing, and in the fall we're going to be, really doing some big stuff there. So it's a huge passion of mine, definitely something that I'm fully invested in and very excited about. And I do think I struggle with that because I'm like, oh, I do this and I do that. But, I think eventually it all kind of makes sense together. And I just think it's important for people to not get too boxed into, what they do, I think a lot of this, like finding your purpose is like, they think it's like, oh, I'm a lawyer or I'm a doctor. And one of my big things, especially in the art world, is to show that people are multi-talented. And just because you're known for being a musician, let's say, doesn't mean you're not a photographer. Or just because you're known for being a filmmaker doesn't mean you're not, a musician. It's just people are multi-talented. And so I just embrace the concept of doing multiple things. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. My father's an entrepreneur, and I love people who do it their own way. And, I'm really, not... The corporate thing has just never been my game. I respect those that are doing it consciously and doing it well. And I think there's a lot of advancement that can happen in corporate life. But, I chose the road less traveled. And I think part of that is just supporting other people and understanding that you just don't have to do one thing, because some people aren't designed to do one thing. And I think it's really fun to kind of put that kaleidoscope together a little bit, and kind of, it's like a quilt, you kind of have to stitch it together. And for those that are rainbow people, I call them, like that, they're not just specialists, they're multi-talented. It's fun to sort of, help them understand that, embrace that, and encourage it. And that's really fun for me.
Earlier, you've a few times talked about ascending.
Yeah.
And I have a very Christian outlook with the word ascension.
Yeah.
So it seems like you're using it in a different semantic manner.
I use it mostly in the spiritual community. It's common, that's where ascension symptoms, people talk about it a lot who are, I don't know. Again, there's the religion and there's spirituality, you know what I mean? Right. And these are always, people are always one side or the other, I think it's all part of the same thing. And words are really, it's very, very, that's why channelers are so important, because the language they use is so significant, and so these words can get really loaded, like ascension, like, twin flame, like, manifesting, like the culture just absorbs them, and then they become overcrowded, and then it just adds to the confusion even more. So it's really challenging to talk about spiritual concepts using human language, because it's, once you label it, it's not that, So once you say it's ascension, it's not ascension. There's really, you can't contain it, So we do our best, right, with the words that we are able to, we got to communicate. So, but it's interesting to see what things trigger in people. You say the word ascension. Wow, someone could really, flash back to like preschool or like Sunday school stuff or church days, and they see, it's different for everybody, but that's an opening for you to kind of look at, well, why does that, word, what does that make me feel? And it's just like pictures and images and art can do that. Words do the same thing. That's why writing is so important. And writers are so important in the beauty that they can, it's incredible, right?
Well, what do you mean when you say ascension?
When I say ascension, what I'm referring to is a raising of our vibration, our consistent raising of vibration, and increasing light, and increasing more joy, and focusing on love, and all of these things that allow our natural frequency to sort of go higher, so we can vibrate at a higher level. And it's really, it can be really jarring, on the physical level. So it's just going up, it's ascension, 3rd D consciousness to 4th, 4D is like the dream state, 5D is now where we're kind of, things aren't so black and white. It's a little bit more unity consciousness, there's an opening there,
Do you think that's why fluid sexuality and transgender and all these elements of gender and sex are so fluid?
Yes, Absolutely. That is, and there's a lot of, I mean, that's a whole other conversation, which my friend Alan is coming to town, who's a expert on UFO and, ETs. And I'm not as knowledgeable about that, but I get a lot of downloads around that at certain times. And I feel a lot of this, this coming together of other, our galactic friends, I call them. And that's coming online, more and more. And I think there's an awakening happening there, in terms of just the fluidity of not only of our gender here as as humans, but also with the coming together of other beings, and it's all starting to kind of coagulate. They're here to help us, I believe, and I just encourage those transmissions because I think it's really beautiful. And I think the earth needs a lot of help. I think we're really, really at a point where we're really hurting ourselves, and, I think we should be open to their help and open to their guidance because we have a galactic responsibility. And I think that we're often very consumed because of the density of this planet into the dark and the things that, cause so much conflict. And so, I work more and more with that energy. Like I said, my friend Alan, is, he's coming tomorrow. I get to see him, which is really cool. But there's a lot of people doing really good work in that area. And that's also part of ascension, it's just understanding, that we're all from somewhere, star seeds, whatever you want to call it. And I think it's really fun. I often feel, and a lot of my clients have this divine homesickness, I call it, where some of us just don't always feel like this is where our home is. We feel more connected. That's why the stars are so comforting to many of us and the planets, and we look to outer space because we're looking for our planet, our galactic home and things like that. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. And I think, there is sort of that existential, kind of thing going on where I think talking about those things is going to be a lot more commonplace, or I feel it should be.
Well, is there anything that hasn't been touched upon that you would...
God, you went deep, man. I love it. This was so fun. I just know everything's evolving. Everything, you know what I mean? Like our conversation today is this. It could be 10 other things tomorrow, so things are happening quickly. Like we are evolving. So stay present, stay grounded, each day is precious. Our life is we're co-creating it, and our thoughts and our feelings and our beliefs are really powerful and really important. And learning to love yourself is the journey of this life is within. I really do believe that. And so I just encourage people to open up to themselves and to ask for help if they need it, and to allow that. It's like a flower opening, they often show it to me as that, like having your heart just open. So just helping people open their hearts, and working with yourself to open it, I think is really, probably the best thing that we can do. And I think as we do that for ourselves, it naturally opens up the energies around us, and then we can all elevate and grow and really change the world, one little heart opening at a time. So that's really, what I feel. And it's just something that you can do with yourself all day energetically, just imagining that heart opening, and I do that, when I get nervous or when I feel, like I just need that love. I just feel that in my heart, and it helps.
Is automatic writing one of your consistent tools?
Yeah, I do that every morning.
Okay.
I journal. I have my journal here, and I just do. I usually just write out whatever comes to mind, but then I answer myself. So it's kind of fun. Like I'll just it's like, yes, Julie, you da da da, and it's just a really, when you kind of work with, the energies and stuff, like it's not so serious sometimes. I think sometimes people think spirituality is like, oh, and you got to be all like kumbaya, and so it's not. Like the universe has a sense of humor, and I love like kind of normalizing, communication with guides and angels and spiritual being, like the unseen world. I love normalizing that because they're just freaking normal. You know what I mean? Like it's not like you got to get down and pray on your knee. You know, the reverence is beautiful. They appreciate that, but it's really just having a conversation, you know, like with your best friend or someone that just sees your life from a higher perspective. And I just think the more you engage in that and the more you know, have those conversations with yourself through writing, through whatever you do that works for you, it just continues to guide you, you know, and your life does get better and you do open up and you are in the right place at the right time and all these beautiful blessings and miracles can happen. And I think it's through that connection, through the exercising of that and the practice of that. They love that. They just, you know, your guides and angels can't intervene unless you ask them to, because we have free will. So it's really important that you ask for the help and that you communicate with them and just, you know, guide me. Thank you. Thank you is the best prayer you can offer. It's just thank you, you know, waking up with gratitude. I mean, Eckhart Tolle says that, like, all you have to do is just say thank you. Like, that's it. You don't have to, you know, just thank you. And they love that, you know, they're just like, they get so happy because they get to help you. Imagine being an angel. That's your job, you know, like you want to fulfill your purpose is to help the humans. So they love it. It makes them ascend, you know, it helps them go higher. So it's really beautiful, you know, and I just, that's what I've done in my life to help me overcome my difficulties and challenges. And it's just something that you have forever. You can't ever, it won't ever leave you. You always have that. You always have. And I think it's important that we understand and appreciate that and normalize that for people so that those that are challenged can have the guidance that they need within their own soul, you know?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well.
Wow. Is that it?
That's it.
I feel good. I feel good. I feel complete.
All right.
Amen. Hallelujah.